This is a fleeing driver that just happened here, and Sky 5 is overhead from KTLA. This dark-colored vehicle apparently was on a 110 freeway and was weaving between cars, going shoulder to shoulder, trying to evade police. And apparently, as I said, this is an alleged murder suspect, and I don't know, obviously, any other updates on the situation or what case he is tied to at this point, but it sounds like KTLA and NBC4 in Los Angeles have more of this information. We're going to switch coverage and go to NBC4 now.
Coming into the Carson area.
And this is the traffic we would normally see this hour of the day on that freeway. What's his next option? You mentioned the 405. Has he bypassed the 105 yet?
Not yet. So his next option, as you said, the 405 freeway, he'll have the option to go either north or south. My gut feeling is he's going to stay on the 110 because that's the way he came down originally. Beyond that, we've got the 91 freeway, east or west, and then the 105. But again, he passed all of those freeways earlier and had a chance to get on any of them and chose to stay on the 110. There's a spike strip.
There's a spike strip.
You saw the spike strip. You saw that CHP officer. I don't know if that was successful or not. I'm waiting to hear on the scanner if they think they got him on the passenger side of the vehicle. We'll see if he starts to slow down, and again, I'll wait for confirmation. But you saw the spike strip there, that very brave officer there from the California Highway Patrol getting in that lane to deploy that spike strip, and it might have worked. I do see him slowing down and moving over to the right shoulder.
I was picking up on the stalled traffic there on the freeway, wondering what was happening here. Again, the CHP, this coordinated effort between the LAPD and the CHP here. This is the CHP's jurisdiction. Eliana, correct me if I'm wrong. But again, laying down that spike strip, it appears to have been successful.
Yeah, it does appear to have been successful just because he slowed down significantly and appears to be trying to find his way off the freeway at this point. And as you said, that was the California Highway Patrol. This is their jurisdiction. We're on the freeway. But as far as I know, it's still LAPD that's behind him. I really haven't seen any squad cars directly behind him because when he exited the freeway, that's when he was able to kind of lose some of the units. But the airships are still overhead. Again, 2 police ships over this one as he exits the Torrance Boulevard exit here from the 110 freeway.
Just thinking back to that where the CHP officer...
Oh, there goes the tire.
Oh, there goes one. The CHP officer threw out that spike strip. That was textbook. I mean, it couldn't have been any better. We just had up there Michael and Ileana a moment ago where he got off the 110 and went the wrong way up one of the entrance ramps or the exit ramps there.
Riding on the rim here as we enter city streets right now. Atlanta, we see that cruiser behind. Again, still about 30, 31 miles per hour for this Toyota Corolla.
He could pit now.
Gone. I saw it roll off. He's dragging a bumper. I think there's damage to perhaps one more tire from what I'm hearing on the scanner. But you mentioned that unit is behind him. I see multiple units now. Very slow speeds here compared to what we had seen earlier. And it is a parade of patrol units behind.
As we continue to try to get our signal back, one of the problems here, Michael, and Ileana, if you can hear me as well, if this is a murder suspect who's in this car here, the officers don't know whether or not he's armed.
Yeah, correct. They know more about the original homicide than we do, of course, so we don't know if a weapon was used in that murder, if it was something like a knife. So at this point, unknown to us, but obviously these officers have a lot more information about who is behind the wheel and what type of weapon was used. So when this does come to a stop, we will see officers really slow things down. You will see them get out of their patrol units armed, likely with shields as well, perhaps even a police canine. There's really going to be no rush to take this guy into custody when it comes to an end. They will really take their time to make sure that nobody, not even the suspect, gets hurt.
Yeah, considering what the want here is, Eliana, are they going to keep their distance as we see here, as we pass through these trees here?
Yeah, at this point, you can see they're not on his right on his tail. They're giving him a little bit of room. They could have tried a pit maneuver at these spades, and they haven't done it. I haven't heard them authorized to do that. And usually when they're not authorized to do that, it means that they know that the guy is armed. So I'll continue to monitor the scanner, see if they do get permission at some point. But for now, they're just going to continue to trail this guy, likely until the vehicle just gives up on him.
Ileana, give us an idea of what this neighborhood looks like. We're very focused on the car here. What's around here? Is he on Main Street still?
Yeah, so this is Main, right under the 405 freeway here in the Carson area. So we should see the vehicle pop out the other side unless he stops under the freeway. I can't imagine that he'll try to get on the freeway, and sure enough, he didn't even try it. So there he goes on the other side. Now, this area is very close to the Dignity Health Sports Park. There's also a golf course nearby. So as I went out the shot, you'll kind of get a better feel of where we're at. You've got the wash there. It's not residential, thankfully. But a lot of commercial areas here as he continues northbound on Main and continues to slow down. We're also very close to where the Goodyear blimp is usually parked. I don't know if it's there today. Yep, there it is right there. So there's the Goodyear blimp as it comes just past this pursuit here northbound on Main.
Hey, Ileana, you've covered a lot of these here for us. Read the tea leaves. What's going to happen here? Are we going to stay at this progression, these speeds here with the LAPD, or are we going to see something a little more aggressive, perhaps?
I think what we'll see is that the officers will be very careful in terms of continuing to chase this guy, just because we don't know if he's armed, but they likely have more information in that sense. They're not going to try anything dramatic. They can clearly see that the vehicle is not going to be able to go much longer. So they'll continue to chase at this safe distance with their lights and sirens, just to alert the general public here in the area of what is coming their way. Not incredibly fast anymore, thankfully, but still a very dangerous situation as we now leave those more commercial areas and get into what is a more residential area here just off of Main, north of the 405 freeway.
It's remarkable as we look at that car. It's dragging a bumper. We know it's lost at least one wheel, one tire, so it's on the rim here. But even at these speeds, 20 miles an hour or so, there seems to be some stability in the car.
Yeah, it helps that he's going so slow now, of course. That's why we're not seeing sparks flying any faster, and I'm sure we would. And in terms of any other tires being damaged, I never got word on the scanner here if the officers thought that there was damage to any one of the other wheels, but at this point it doesn't seem like it. So he should still have 3 good tires to continue going. But of course he's also dragging that bumper as he continues northbound on Main and comes up to Victoria Street. And I'll widen out the shot to give you a feel for the neighborhood. Commercial on one side, residential on the other, and coming up to a major intersection here in Carson.
Will this at all change protocol, Ileana? We've seen them driving near the port. We saw them on the freeways. We saw them in an industrial area. Now we're in residential. Will things change?
Officers are really going to want to be careful on this one, so they really don't want to do anything that will potentially agitate this guy. So they could try another spike strip. Now that he's somewhat predictable, he's staying on Main, he's going northbound, and he's not really deviating from that. So at this point, officers really could go up ahead, set up another spike strip, perhaps get one of those other tires, and maybe that will finally bring things to an end. Of course, normally at these speeds and with a vehicle of this size, we would be talking about a pit maneuver. All LAPD units are pit trained, so they have that capability. But because this is a suspect who may potentially be armed with some sort of weapon, that is why at this point I have not heard LAPD authorize it. But of course we'll continue to listen in and see if at any point that does become the next step. But for now, northbound on Main, going to be coming up to the 91 freeway here very soon.
We want to remind our viewers, we're coming up on 4:30 here in just a moment. This is a potential murder suspect that they are following in this car. It started with very unusual circumstances just before 4 o'clock. Ileana, you said there were 2 people in the car initially?
Yeah, and there may have been even more than that. But what we do know is that whoever was driving, they surrendered. LAPD Newton Division officers stopped this vehicle south of downtown, and the person driving stopped when he saw the lights and sirens, or she saw the lights and sirens behind them, and got out of the vehicle and surrendered. But the passenger jumped in the driver's seat and took off, and then jumped onto the 110 South. That led us all the way to where it comes to an end in the San Pedro area, the LA Harbor area, and then he U-turned, went back north, and then of course he did run over that spike strip. We saw it here live on the air, and that is why he lost that tire, and at some point obviously had that damage to the bumper as well, and that's really what has slowed things down. But that really doesn't take away from the fact that this is just extremely dangerous, because this person is wanted for a murder. We don't have any information at this point as to when and where that took place, but we know that LAPD officers from the Newton Division spotted this car. They knew it had been connected to that murder in some way. They tried to pull it over. The driver stopped, gave up, but the passenger took off.
Yeah, and we now, again, watch that passenger now in the driver's seat, riding on 3 wheels here at this point, one of those being the rim there. Eliana, if I can, again, remind our viewers, we talk about the unusual circumstances of this particular chase here. This is the same driver who went up the wrong way on a ramp off the freeway onto oncoming traffic here. So again, a very precarious situation here for not only for the drivers, but for the other drivers as well as the LAPD in pursuit.
Absolutely. You could definitely sense his desperation when the 110 freeway came to an end, and then he jumped on the Vincent Thomas Bridge, then went the wrong way a few times, nearly hit a pedestrian, and was just driving between vehicles that were coming right at him, and was somehow able to weasel his way out of that, get back onto the 110 North, which I think it was his intention to stay on that 110 North and go back to where this all began, which would have been just south of downtown. But when he ran over that spike strip, that really changed things for this driver, and he was forced to exit, but he still hasn't stopped. Thankfully, the speed's much lower than what we saw earlier, but at one point we saw triple digits. It really was highly dangerous. It still is. But continuing now on surface streets, Main here, north of the 91 now. So our next freeway that's going to come up is the 105. But at the speeds that he's going at, it's going to be quite a bit before we get there.
No, and remember when you started on this, right at the top of the 4 o'clock, we saw speeds well over 100 miles an hour. In fact, Ileana, I remember you remarking we were having trouble catching up with him, and you're in a helicopter.
Yeah, and he was going, I think, at one point about 130 or so. Again, what is described as a Toyota Corolla, but it was really going fast on the 110 freeway, giving us a run for our money. But we eventually caught up as he almost got to the end of the 110 freeway. He just ran that red there, by the way. Thankfully, everybody else stopped for him. One thing that is working in this guy's favor is that he's got all those units behind him. So people are seeing the police units. They're hearing the sirens. And so they are thankfully stopping at the intersections, even when they have the green. And then this guy is just continuing right on through. But we're now getting into the Rancho Dominguez area, so almost into the Compton area, but continuing northbound on Main. He hasn't turned onto any other street, really, since exiting the freeway.
Yeah, you know, the turning point for this particular driver, now have its split screen here for you. That there was the CHP laying down a spike strip on the 110 freeway. And that's where he incurred most of the damage here to this car. Again, losing a wheel at this point. You see the driver side front wheel there on the rim. He's been driving this way here, Colleen, for quite a while now. He
has. And, you know, it's interesting. We saw that traffic stop there on the freeway. Or I remember looking at you, you looked at me, and we're thinking, wow, traffic is really heavy on the 110 freeway there. And then we saw the CHP officer sort of dart out from that front car, throw out that spike strip, and you knew almost immediately at least one of the wheels had caught that spike strip.
At that particular point, we thought it was perhaps the passenger side, but again, he seemed to have gotten that driver's side as well. Again, this what we can call, Eliana, a slow speed chase here at this point here along West Rosecrans Avenue.
Yeah, he's at Main with the intersection here with Rosecrans. Please slow down, please slow down. Oh, gosh. this guy's crawling through the intersection, and everybody else, of course, going practically freeway speeds here on surface streets here through the area, but thankfully made it through that one without getting T-boned and hurting anyone else, too. But he just made it through Rosecrans, continuing northbound on Main. Again, eventually we will get up to the 105 freeway, but I highly doubt that this guy's even going to try to get on the freeway, considering that he's just crawling on streets here. But we still have plenty of units behind him. Even if he tries to abandon the vehicle and take off running, he's going to have a tough time. Look at all these squad cars here from the LAPD, and beyond that, beyond those black and whites, I do see some unmarked units too, plus the police helicopters overhead. So there's really no chance that this person's going to be able to get out of this one. The question is just, how is this going to end? Is he just simply going to come to a stop? Is the vehicle going to get disabled? At this point, he's really not going to be able to go much faster than this, though, considering that he's missing that front driver's side tire.
Ileana, as we look at this, I want to point out we're once again in a residential area. We saw a school bus just pass in front of the screen. But have you ever seen a bumper hang on that long?
Right.
That bumper is hanging on for dear life. It's incredible after how long this guy has been dragging it across the streets here of the Carson and now Willowbrook area. It's pretty incredible that it hasn't completely torn off. But we believe that that damage was caused when he had exited the 110 freeway and then tried to get back on. He must have hit one of the other vehicles that he nearly had collided with, and has been dragging it ever since. Even before he hit that spike strip, he was already dragging that bumper. We will likely see him lose it at some point if he doesn't come to a stop before then, but still no sparks coming from that front rim, despite the fact that that tire is completely gone.
Yeah, and these speeds have been relatively low, too, ever since. Eliana, so we mentioned the original driver jumped out of the car as soon as he or she heard lights and sirens. I can only assume at this point they're trying to get as much information as possible. Do you think perhaps contact is being made with the driver now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Considering that they have at least one person that was in the car, that person can easily tell them, hey, this is who was with me. This is the person that's in that car. And then, of course, even if that wasn't the original homicide suspect, this person still fled. This is still evading, and obviously reckless driving. We witnessed that ourselves, of course. So even if this person wasn't wanted for the homicide and was wanted for perhaps just something else, they just should have stopped. They were the passenger in all of this. They would have been taken into custody at the initial traffic stop, just like the driver. But for whatever reason, they decided to jump in the driver's seat and they took off. Again, we know that at least one person is in custody. Whether there were any other passengers in the car at the time, though, that is unknown.
And we want to remind viewers, the reason that you are seeing all these black and whites, all these CHP officers keeping their distance here is that the information we have is that this person is a murder suspect here. So they don't know necessarily whether or not that person driving the car is armed.
Yeah, normally on police pursuits, we see about 3 squad cars typically, maybe 5. But in this case, it's really rare to see this many. And those are just the black and whites that we can see. I can see beyond that there's some unmarked units following as well. In situations like this, they can also request a police canine unit to start trailing the vehicle as well, so that when the vehicle does come to a stop, they at least have the canine officer as a potential resource that they can use to try to bring things to a peaceful end. But you can see the street gets a little bit more narrower here. We're still on Main, but becoming highly residential here. Lots of apartment complexes on either side of the street as we approach 118th Street here in the Wilmington area. Yeah,
this has been going on for quite a while. Something I picked up on was the fact that we see more people out of their apartments and homes here, eyeing exactly what is going on. I don't know if they're being alerted by the choppers in the area or the lights and sirens, but again, people are really taking notice of what's happening here, Eliana.
Yeah, absolutely. This chase has been going on now for about 40 minutes or so. So if they haven't heard about it from the TV, they of course can hear all of the helicopters overhead. They're also hearing the sirens from the multiple police units that continue to chase this guy. So I am seeing a lot more pedestrian traffic, as you said. People just coming out to take a look. Of course, have to document it for their social media or it didn't happen. But continuing northbound on Main, we're coming up to Imperial Highway, of course, a major street here through the area, and it looks like he's just going to continue right on through. So earlier I had said, I think this guy's going to take the 110 north. I think he's going to go back to where it all began. That may still be the case. He may still go back to where it all began, but considering that the freeway isn't really an option for him anymore at these speeds, he can take Main Street all the way up to just south of downtown. It does run parallel to the 110 freeway on the east side of the freeway, pretty much the entire stretch, even into downtown. So I think at this point, that may be where we're going.
Well, you have to wonder what the driver behind the wheel is thinking here. What is the end game? Clearly, there are a number of black and whites behind him. He obviously can hear the choppers overhead. When do you stop? What do you do? I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whoever's driving this car is likely on the phone. They're probably saying their goodbyes to whoever they have to, knowing that when this comes to an end, this person will likely go away for a long time. If, in fact, they are the person that the LAPD was searching for in connection with that homicide. Of course, even if they're not found guilty of that at the end of the day, they are, of course, going to be found guilty of reckless driving, failure to yield, evading. So this person just tacking on the charges here. And I'll tell you that there is a dispatcher that is documenting everything that this person is doing. So the units behind him, they're calling out every street that he's crossing over, every red light that he's running, every stop sign that he's running, and that all gets added on when things are said and done. You can see, though, continuing northbound on Main, and our shot will start to get further. As you can tell, he is going into the LAX airspace now, so the shot will get a little bit further as he enters the LAX airspace here, just north of the 105 freeway on Main Street.
You know, Colleen, as we keep Eliana's shot here and we split screen it here as to what happened earlier in this chase, again, now it's a slow speed chase with the LAPD behind. Not once have we seen the driver, and we typically see this throughout, you know, the taunting by the driver to officers. No.
Look at that. Look at that. You know, that was one of the, I want to get back to that thought, but it was as if this driver was playing chicken with the big trucks out there in this very small car. But you see him weaving in and out of these semi-trucks as they head into the port. And that wasn't even the most egregious incidents we saw. It's coming up. Yeah,
it reminds me of a game of Frogger, trying to get across without getting hurt here. But again, no taunting by the driver at this point either. I mean, the windows have been up, as Eliana mentioned, perhaps speaking to somebody on the phone, perhaps saying their goodbyes to whomever. But again, a slow speed chase on the left here. Some of the, as we call, the greatest hits here on the right. Again, some of, as Colleen mentioned, we haven't yet pinpointed the most egregious yet. We can re-rack that video for you. But again, at one point in time, this driver going up the on-ramp of the freeway in the opposite direction. Right.
He was originally on the 110, had gone over the Vincent Thomas Bridge, and I'm wondering if this is it. This looks like, yeah, there it is. I'm wondering if we can figure out what that one is. He's not going the wrong way there.
Yeah, just I think
he's actually just getting on the 110 freeway. Here we go. He makes a U-turn. And what's interesting, you see the officers start to do the same thing, and this is a long ramp. I mean, you look, and he passes not one, not two, but three at least trucks that I counted here.
And perhaps clips somebody here.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden, after this was when we began to notice the bumper was dragging. Yeah. Not right away, but it came up here.
And again, we should point out these are in pretty intense speeds early on. We're talking in anywhere from 90 to, 100, as Leon mentioned, 130 miles per hour. Yeah. Again, this was one of the greatest hits here as well. Again, the CHP laying out a spike strip. We talked about the traffic becoming heavy all of a sudden, and again, now we know why, and again, causing more damage here to this Toyota Corolla.
And think about how that had to work. I mean, The officer had to run a traffic brake, so that traffic was at a standstill, but, you know, the driver was committed to this freeway here. The officer then popped out in front of the car that was closest to the shoulder of the road, threw out that spike strip, and apparently caught at least one and maybe two tires here. Shortly after that was when we saw the rubber come off the rim.
Yeah, and we were so fixated on the fact that this was an LAPD chase. But again, while you're on a freeway here, that becomes the CHP's jurisdiction. We talked about the mutual aid between agencies here. And again, that CHP officer laying out that spike strip and actually being quite successful, all the while, you know, conducting a traffic brake and, again, keeping an eye on what is happening here with this car.
As Ileana pointed out, she thought this driver might get back on the 110 freeway heading towards where he was stopped originally, and that was just south of downtown. Clearly, that car doesn't have the capacity to get on the freeway and go anywhere quickly, but they are on they were on Main Street. I'm not sure if they're still heading in the same direction, but they seem to be paralleling the 110 freeway.
Again, this is the passenger originally who jumped into the driver's seat. And as we mentioned earlier with Eliana's coverage here, the driver saw lights and sirens early on, stopped the car, got out of the car. The passenger jumped into the driver's seat, and this is now who is controlling that now almost disabled Toyota Corolla.
You know, I'm looking at that white car. It almost looked like that car was trying to slow down the car in the chase, but may have just not known what was coming up behind him there. Once again, I'm counting 3, 6, is that
7?
7?
Yeah.
7 squad cars behind that car. And it looks like they're looking ahead. I'm wondering if they're thinking about, at some point now, attempting a pit maneuver. You see that third car pop out every once in a while and sort of get a lay of the land in both directions.
Yeah, not in that single file formation anymore. Again, still keeping their distance with lights and sirens on. And we talked about, you know, some of the different areas this driver has taken these officers here. And now we appear to be in, again, a residential area of Los Angeles. And again, it appears that the officers continue to keep their distance, and we're, in terms of speeds, in single digits at this point.
I look at the time. It's 4:45, 4:45 here in the afternoon. Thank goodness there are not kids walking home from school. We've gone through enough residential areas that there have to be schools in the nearby vicinity. But we have seen a number of school buses driving through the shots out there. So kids are headed home. Do you see the folks on the sidewalk there, Michael?
Yeah, we talked about the number of folks who have been made aware of this chase, if not by television, if not by their smartphones, and of course then by the 2 airships above, along with the LAPD here behind with lights and sirens. And saw people out with their phones. Again, this is an age of social media, and if you don't get it on social media, then it didn't happen.
All right, we have our investigative reporter Eric Leonard on the phone with us. When it comes to anything police and CHP or law enforcement, he knows all. Eric, talk to us a little bit about the problem with doing any kind of pit maneuver or moving in on a murder suspect like this.
Yeah, well, obviously they're going to be extraordinarily cautious with somebody that they suspect in a violent crime. That would happen whether they could do a pit maneuver or not, or do pit maneuver is just one of several things that could be done to try to bring this to an end by an intervention rather than just waiting for whoever this is to stop. And those things they are extra careful about when they are dealing with somebody that they suspect in a violent crime. And of course here we know that they are pursuing this person because they are a suspect in a murder. The pursuit began back in the Newton division, which is northeast east of downtown Los Angeles, but it's not clear to us just yet that that's where the murder in question took place. It may have been that this vehicle was detected through any number of automatic means. They've got electronic license plate readers around the city. That may have alerted officers. It doesn't appear from the little bit of information we got just before I joined you that this was the result of a stakeout, which sometimes we do see when investigators are sitting on somebody's house or they spot a car and they set up a surveillance. This sounds like this may have begun in a slightly different way. But to your question, it is a really dicey situation, and they are constantly trying to balance the need to intervene and end it with with the danger that this presents to the rest of the public. And if they're dealing with somebody who may be armed, they are going to be extra cautious about where that intervention takes place. As you pointed out, we are now in a heavily populated residential area, and this is the kind of area where they don't like to do those sorts of things simply because of the extraordinary risk that it may present to everybody else.
Eric, it appears as if he's getting back onto the freeway.
It sure does. You know, it was unusual when I was watching earlier that the CHP used spike strips on the freeway. I can't remember seeing that before in the way that it was done, where all of traffic was stopped, leaving only the shoulder or that center lane open, forcing this person into the spike strip. They laid a trap, and then it looked like the spike strips worked about as well as I've ever seen them work. The tires deflated almost immediately, and it's extraordinary it's gone on this long since then. It seemed like the driver was going in one single direction because steering becomes difficult when you don't have tires. But sure enough, we've watched as they've maneuvered back under the freeway, back onto the freeway. Now it looks like they're getting off again.
All right, so Eric, if we can keep you on standby for a second, we have Eliana back. Eliana, we saw this driver get back onto the freeway, now getting off again with the LAPD still in pursuit. Eliana, are you with us?
Hey there, Michael. I'm having a little bit of an IFB issue, so I'm going to ask NOC if they could reset it. But he just exited off of the 110 freeway after getting on for just one exit's worth. He did get on to that 110 South. He stayed on it just until he could exit again and is currently under the 110 freeway. We should see him pop out the other side here. You see all of those LAPD units still behind him, and he is picking up a little bit of speed. I'm really surprised by that, considering that he has been driving relatively slow here the last 15 minutes or so, considering that he lost that tire. But he is now going eastbound here, eastbound in the area of Broadway and 87th.
We would have bet there was no way that car could get back on the freeway, but clearly he knew that was something of a shortcut. He could get on and get off just in one fell swoop there.
Again, with the LAPD still in tow, they're keeping very close tabs on the driver here as we continue to watch this chase here on West 87th Street. Eliana, at all surprised by the fact that he got on, even though it was for one exit? Back onto the freeway?
I was surprised. I was, Michael, because I wasn't expecting him to try to get on the freeway at all going forward, just because of the heavy damage to the vehicle, and he hadn't tried to get on the freeway ever since he lost that tire in that successful spike strip attempt, or successful spike strip on the 110 freeway. And he had stayed on Main during the last 15-20 minutes or so before he made a westbound turn, went to the 110 freeway, and then simply got on and got right back off. But you see the officers are still very close by, currently in the area of Main and Manchester, which is always extremely difficult for us because of LAX airspace rules. But you can still see all of the units directly behind him as he continues northbound, crossing over 83rd, and that bumper still hanging on, and that tire still the only one that has been damaged here during the chase.
Ileana, give us an idea of any landmarks there. If people are not familiar with the area, anything that stands out that's close by?
The only thing I can mention to folks that's near here is the 77th Street Division of the LAPD, so the police station down here. Other than that, it is highly residential and commercial, but really not too much in the way of landmarks that most folks would know, other than, of course, the police station there. But he's continuing on Main. I should mention he's just on the east side of the 110 freeway. He's north of the 105, so north of Imperial Highway, and continuing trekking along here on Main, and it seems to be a street that he knows very well because we have been up and down it now for quite some time. A chase that started nearly an hour ago that has really been on the 110 freeway, and it's been on Main. It really hasn't been really nowhere else other than that.
And Eliana, you've covered, I always, tap into your expertise here. Again, we see him returning to a neighborhood perhaps where this all began. This is not unusual.
It's not unusual. That's usually what we see in police pursuits, where drivers tend to return to an area that is familiar to them, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. If you are in your neighborhood, you're going to know where all of the dead ends are, you're going to know where your friend lives, you're going to know where a parking structure is, so it really does give you more options when it comes to trying to evade the authorities. So that is why we typically do see that. Of course, we also see people who try to make a run for the border and just go south on the 5 till something happens and they are taken into custody. He just made that eastbound turn onto Florence, though. So, George, if we could backtrack, maybe go south on Alameda, because he's headed eastbound now on Florence, toward the Florence-Graham area here in South LA.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that are unusual about this particular chase or pursuit, but one thing that stands out when it started just about an hour or so ago is that there was someone behind the wheel of this car. There were two people in the car. That person, that driver, pulled over, got out of the car.
Just a break. We're getting some emergency alerts from UNCW's campus up in Wilmington. This alert that was sent out to students, and I'm guessing faculty as well, says that university police have received unconfirmed anonymous reports via social media regarding a subject with a gun on campus. UPD, which is the on-campus police department, taking these claims seriously, and they're investigating. They're asking folks to shelter in place at this time. This alert was sent out around 7:19 p.m. Eastern time. Everyone on campus or related to campus got this message. So again, we are just letting you know that if you know anyone on campus, we had an employee tell us that they had someone on campus there. So as well, we wanted to make sure that folks knew about the situation. Hopefully we'll get an update, obviously, in the next hour or two, and we will let you know, if not here on WCNC Plus on our news at 11, the update. But again, our thoughts are with folks on this campus right now, potentially an emergency situation happening on campus of UNC Wilmington. We'll go back to this pursuit of this murder suspect, or alleged murder suspect, on NBC4.
This is going to end at some point. It's just a matter of how quickly either the car runs out of gas, mechanically falls apart, or a decision is made by somebody in the command structure of the LAPD to do something to stop it. And as we were just talking a minute ago, I mean, he's in a residential area, high density. There are lots of people on the streets right now. It would surprise me if they gave the go-ahead to try to intervene, either by trying a pit maneuver, although the speed is so low at this point that seems going on any longer. In the past, when we've seen officers behind somebody that they believe to be armed and dangerous, we have seen them bring in some of their armored trucks, their Bearcats or other vehicles that belong to the Metropolitan Division and members of its SWAT team to try to corner somebody and bring these to an end. We have seen that done before, but of course that would require that there's some sense of where this person is going so they can pre-position some of those, those vehicles and get them in place. I have not seen indications that they're doing that just yet, but it is an option if somebody makes the call that this has to stop.
But for the most part, Eric, what we see is what we get here, correct?
Yeah, and we were covering yesterday another story about innocent people that have been hurt as the result of police action in traffic collisions. And the department is really sensitive to that right now, for good reason. Lots of people who have nothing to do with the police activity have been hurt in collisions when officers are out chasing somebody. So generally, the LAPD, at least in the last few years, has erred on the side of caution and tried to not do things that would cause harm to others or cause an unnecessary risk. And so I think what we see is what we get right now. They are going to wait this out. The car's damaged. It clearly is not going to drive forever. And certainly in the minds of the department, they hope that mechanically it just stops sooner rather than later.
What we did see at the beginning of this chase was desperation. This guy was doing 130 miles an hour, according to Ileana Moreno, on the 110 freeway. And it almost seems like that desperation level has changed considerably. Obviously, that has to do with the mechanics of the car. He may be running on 2 or 3 tires and a rim. He's dragging a bumper here. Clearly, he can't go to any of the speeds that he saw before, but it almost feels like the desperation has changed as well.
Yeah, we're always trying to get into the mind of the person who is fleeing, and sometimes clearly it's just as simple as I don't want to get arrested, I'm just going to keep driving as long as possible. But other times, like you pointed out, their actions signal their determination to try to get out of whatever's happening. And again, knowing that this is somebody who's wanted in connection with a violent crime combined with that high speed, I think it means that they're going to use all the caution they have at this point, because the person that they are after has already shown that they're willing to do something extraordinarily dangerous, and that's going to be in the minds of everybody making the decisions about how to handle the rest of this tonight.
Considering there have been 7 units behind him here for quite a while, Eric, do you think the LAPD at this point, at some point, will pull off, since they're sort of in control?
I don't think they're going to let this one go, as we've seen in others where they're following somebody who is wanted for a much less serious crime. My sense is this is locked in. Nobody's going home until this person is in custody. As far as swapping out or backing off, sometimes giving them a little bit of room and letting the helicopter follow them, again, we see that more often in pursuits where the reason for the pursuit is something less significant, less serious than a violent crime, certainly less so than a potential murder suspect. I think we're going to see them lock this bumper until this comes to an end one way or another.
We want to remind people, Ileana is still over the scene in News Chopper 4. It's hard to track it right here, but she's overhead, and as soon as we get better pictures, we will zoom in on that. Right now, it is 5 o'clock. We are continuing to follow this breaking news. The LAPD in pursuit of a murder suspect. Good evening once again, everyone. I'm Colleen Williams.
And I'm Michael Briley. Let's get back to Ileana Moreno. She's live for us in News Chopper 4. Ileana.
You need to follow this chase here, but you can obviously see we're quite far from it right now. We have to go around the LAX airspace, which is where this police pursuit currently finds itself, in the area of Avalon, around 92nd Street. And the last image I had there of the driver before we started moving was that he was continuing south, and we should be coming up to him here very soon. There's still about 6 units of the LAPD's Newton Division that are behind this guy, as well as a police airship. Now, earlier there were 2 police airships over him. Now it's down to 1, but you still also got all of those units behind him as well. Again, this is a homicide suspect, a chase that started about an hour ago, where the LAPD's Newton Division pulled the driver over. That person surrendered, but then the passenger got in the driver's seat, took off, and the pursuit has been going at high speeds and dangerous driving ever since.
You know, Ileana, as we continue to cover that the chase in the LAX area, do you think more pursuit drivers are sort of getting hip to the idea that if you go down near an airport, they're harder to find?
I think some people are getting smart to that. Parking structures are also becoming increasingly popular spots for people to try to hide, especially when all you've got is an airship above. In this case, it's a little bit different for this driver because he does have those 6 units right on his tail. There's really not going to be any chance that he's going to be able to get past all of those units. But I should also mention, right before we started moving, I did hear that the LAPD said that there was another vehicle following them, a civilian vehicle. So this could be a situation where the driver of that black Toyota called a friend or called a family member to try to get them out of this very sticky situation that they are now in. And so the LAPD said, stop that vehicle. So I haven't heard them stop it yet. But again, we are hearing that there was a civilian vehicle that was following them as well.
That would have been an added wrinkle to what we've seen already here. And again, we've seen 6 to 7 ground units in chase. To Eric's point, there's no chance the LAPD will pull off their ground units. But Ileana, you mentioned 1 air unit has been pulled, correct?
Yeah, one air unit has been pulled, but they were on it for quite some time. I think
Yeah.
they may have simply just run out of gas, but we're getting back in the area of where this pursuit is. I can almost see it here. It's in the area of South Los Angeles, just north of the 105 freeway. I can almost see it there. I think it's coming up very soon, just around here. I just saw it for a second, coming up to the freeway. So again, just north of the 105, I believe this is it here. Yep, here we go. So here's the vehicle yet again. He made his way all the way south on Avalon. So the street that we last saw him on, he didn't deviate from that. He just stayed going south on that and is now going under the 105 freeway here in Willowbrook.
Where are the closest units here? As you widen out the shot, and he popped out under the bridge. Oh, there it is right there. When you look at the distance, Michael and Ileana and Eric, if you're still with us, what are the chances he could get away long enough to get out of the car and then join up with someone else?
Those units are giving him a little bit of room, but not enough room for him to be able to dodge their eyesight. And of course, we do have the helicopter overhead as well, but the helicopter can be obscured by things like overpasses and of course parking structures. But those officers behind him, there's no way that this person could, in any reasonable way, find the time to get out of this car and get into another one, considering how close all of those units are behind him.
Eliana, now I see a window down. This is the first time I've seen any action from inside the car.
Yeah, I just threw in the doubler there. You can see the man there wearing what looks to be a gray t-shirt. That's really all I can tell. Can't really see if anybody else is inside. All of the windows are very darkly tinted, so we really haven't been able to see much during this pursuit when it comes to what may be going on inside of the vehicle. But yeah, that was our first time to physically see the person that has led LAPD officers here on a very lengthy and dangerous chase and is wanted for murder.
Once again, he's in a residential area. I happen to notice the guy on the motorcycle just off to the right there. But Ileana, he's on, what street is he on? It's hard to tell here. Is he on San Pedro? And which direction is he headed?
Correct. Yeah, this was San Pedro under the 105 freeway. We'll see him pop out the other side unless he tries to get on the freeway. But nope, there he goes. So San Pedro under the 105 freeway, and his speeds have stayed relatively the same. I can throw the speedometer back on now that we're a little bit closer. So still going relatively slow, all things considered, compared to the speeds that we saw at one point on the freeway where he was going 100 miles an hour plus.
And it's important to remind the viewers here, Eliana, he is actually riding on a rim, correct? Riding on the rim there, the front driver's side, again with the bumper hanging off the bottom. And we now have a sort of a bird's eye view as to who the driver is, what the driver's doing. Eliana, with this perhaps civilian car tagging along with the LAPD, how does that change things, if at all?
Well, what I heard officers say was that they wanted to stop that other vehicle. I haven't heard them say if they did, but they got suspicious about a civilian vehicle that was following them. Now, it may be that that person has really nothing to do with this driver, and sometimes they are independent journalists who just want to record the pursuit and will trail the chase. We have seen that happen, and then that person does get pulled over, but then they explain to the police what they were doing, and then they're let go. But of course, if that person was somebody that was contacted by this driver, there we go. Here comes a spike strip. Let's see.
No.
No luck on that one.
Close.
Yeah, not even close, unfortunately. Yeah, as you said, Colleen, Main and 111th Street now.
You know, it's interesting to see a number of people on the sidewalks, to your point, Michael, taking pictures and running video and things like that. Ileana, explain the way that spike strips work. They throw them out, they catch the car, but, you know, we never see a blowout.
Yeah, we never do, and there's a reason behind that. They don't want the driver to get injured, even though, of course, he may not be a good person, as in this case, where he's wanted for a homicide, but they still don't want the person to be injured, so that's why they don't want the tires to just explode on the driver. What they do is they just slowly start to deflate. So they slowly start to deflate, and sometimes it's pretty quick. Sometimes it takes a very long time. We've covered pursuits where it's a big rig, rig and they throw the spike strip, but when you've got 18 tires, it's going to take a whole lot of time. In this case, shortly after running over the spike strip on the 110 freeway, this driver did lose that tire, but it's been a long time since. I'd say it's been about 30 minutes since he lost that tire, and continues to roll here on 3 tires.
Again, I know we're fixated here on the chase here, but I can't help but watch the people on the sidewalks here grouped together with their cameras out.
Taking video.
Taking video. Again, this is the day and age we live in here, but I can't help but mention that, Eliana.
A lot of folks coming out here, Michael, because it's been such a lengthy chase, and it's been in the same area. Here we go, another spike strip. Let's see. Can he do it? No. Darn. He's onto them. He was able to see those 2 officers on different sections here of Main Street who tried to deploy that spike strip, and he was able to dodge it. There's also a man now in the middle of the street. Yeah. I don't know if he was egging him on or what that guy was doing, but you never want to do that, especially in a dangerous situation like this where this person could potentially be armed. But you saw that guy. You see what looks like a tow truck up there. I think he just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, not someone who's purposefully trying to block this guy in. But we do sometimes see that. We see that people sometimes think they can help the police, and they try to be a hero, and they'll try to box the driver in, but you never want to get involved because you don't know what this person is capable of, and in this case we know that this guy is wanted for murder.
What are the chances we'll see another spike strip come up on the corner here, and is that perhaps why this driver is staying in that number 2 lane away from the curb?
I know, see, I lost IFB.
Oh, so you know what, we have Ileana's picture still, the picture from News Chopper 4, but an IFB is a way that we communicate with her. It's an earpiece, and we have Eric in the newsroom. Once again, Eric.
Yes.
Chances of this guy getting away at this point?
Well,
slim and none?
I would say slim to none, but it was very interesting when the prospect of somebody uninvolved in this, or at least to our knowledge uninvolved, following along behind this group of patrol cars, because it has happened. It has happened recently here in Southern California where the person who was being chased got on the phone, got some help from a friend, some buddy, and managed to elude the patrol cars behind them. Now, granted, in those chases, the one I'm thinking of specifically, perhaps about a year ago in Burbank, where somebody was able to pull off underneath a freeway overpass during a pursuit and switch vehicles, switch into a car that had been called in. We may have just seen another spike attempt, by the way. There's a patrol car on the right that was stopped, and it looked like something was thrown towards the street. You were asking before about how the spike strips work. You can imagine little tiny, they look like small drinking straws, but made out of metal that are all lined up, and they're designed to snap off once they've punctured a tire. So it's like a straw or a spigot that then allows the air to slowly leak out of the tire. But it's as you've seen here, there have been 2 or 3 attempts in the last few minutes. It's very difficult to coordinate the timing just right so that the driver doesn't see that there's a spike strip about to be thrown in front of them, but it's done in enough time that, of course, the car runs over it. It's tough to get the timing right. Looks like they may have been able to do that on that last try.
And Eric, it's not like we're going to see the tire combust at that point. It's a slow leak, you say?
Well, yeah, it's, again, just think of a drinking straw, a small segment of one, but it's made out of metal, and one side of it has been cut at a diagonal, so it's sharp. Yeah. And the car rolls over it, the tire rolls over it, it punctures it, and then allows the air to escape. But as Ileana was pointing out, not all tires are made equal. Some of the off-road tires are much thicker, and it just doesn't work as quickly or at all. Some tires are very thin, and it happens really fast, which I think is what we saw earlier today.
Yeah, some of the smaller sports cars go with run-flat tires, so those are less susceptible to any kind of spike strip.